Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
We have a great opportunity for students coming up this summer at Concordia University Irvine. Joining us today, Dr. Joel Oesch, Professor of Theology and Director of Graduate Programs, Christ College, and Executive Director of Crosswise Institute, all at Concordia University Irvine. Dr. Oesch, thanks so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour today.
Yeah, thank you for having me again.
So what happens at Crosswise Institute each summer?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's an awful lot of fun. In the broadest sense, we get high schoolers from around the country to come on campus at Concordia University Irvine for anywhere between 3 and 5 days, depending on the year. This year will be parts of 4 days. Pandemics have a way of changing schedules around here or there, but what happens broadly is that we offer theological reflection on a relevant, cultural or scientific subject. And this can happen in like large group settings with professionals who speak on the topics, and sometimes those professionals aren't necessarily Christian. So we expose students to thinking that's not just in a Christian worldview, but from experts in their particular disciplines. And then we also have breakout sessions on that same theme with Concordia faculty members who might have expertise in matters relating to the subject. And that's kind of the content form or the educational piece of Crosswise. But the other pieces that fill in all of this, and they're no less important, we do experiential activities. We might go off campus for a field trip, or maybe an on-campus guided activity that hits on the theme. A major portion of what we do, of course, is worship and spiritual growth, including prayer, relationship building, small groups. And, of course, the last part is fun. It wouldn't be Southern California if you weren't able to go to the beach for a little bit of time and enjoy some maybe in-and-out double-doubles or something like that. We eat lots of great food, enjoy one another in all the ways God's people really can and should. So that might have a broad overview of what we do.
You said in-and-out double-doubles, and it took me a minute to realize you were talking about food.
Well, yeah, depending on what part of the country, and you're either going to be talking about In-N-Out or Whataburger or
Right.
Chick-fil-A, and I don't necessarily need to throw down the gauntlet, but Crosswise offers those kinds of things that are uniquely Southern California, which is a delight to offer, right? Especially because students don't necessarily come from Southern California. We have them all across the country. I think last year, if I remember, it was 9 different states
Oh, wow.
that were representative, and I think 3 years ago we were up to 12 or 13. So it's always a good opportunity to show off our state, our campus. But more than everything, these kids come to try to do something deep, something meaningful, something that is not sugary, it's not saccharine at all. They're coming because they want to be here. This is, a lot of times I think about it this way, that sometimes there are students in our lives who just don't quite fit with like the Sunday school youth group model. It just, something doesn't quite jive. And this is an opportunity for them to see that, hey, you can be a deeply thoughtful Christian and express those and scratch that itch, if you will, in multiple ways beyond just your Sunday mornings or your youth group night. And this is one of those opportunities where you get exposure to the highest caliber of thinking from professors, from doctors, from people who are experts in their particular field. And I think that's something valuable and useful.
So let's dig into that a little bit more. Why offer something like this to high school students that really encourages that deeper critical thinking?
Yeah, I guess I would say more than ever, I think we have to resist what I call one-factor explanations. It's very tempting. We have a tendency to reduce all complex issues to one simple explanation that we can get our heads around. And I get it. I mean, we're human beings. We want to reduce things into digestible chunks to make sense of our world. And give you an example, we do this with our sports teams all the time, right? Especially if you're not the one who holds the trophy at the end. You're like, oh, our problem is our defensive backs, or our problem is our head coach, or we should have traded for this guy, or protected this free agent. It's always one thing, right? But I don't think complex problems really work this way. I would say only rarely, if ever, can you reduce a cultural issue to an ism, like capitalism or racism or sexism, et cetera. There's always more that meets the eye there. And it's not different with issues of science and technology. You encounter basically the same problem, which is the problem itself is complex, right? It requires some deep thinking. And for me, more than deep thinking, it requires wide reading and a nimble movement across a variety of disciplines. And so I think it's useful to have our professors model what that kind of thinking looks like so that these students can say, you know what, my world's quite a bit bigger than I think it is. And while I see perhaps one or two facets in this particular gemstone quite clearly, perhaps there's multiple disciplines that can shed more light on this issue. And so, once you admit this, the world really opens up to you. It's just like traveling to a new country that you before have only read about. Like it's so much more vibrant and complicated and beautiful when you're there in person. And so I'm kind of hoping that I'm taking these students, or we're taking as a team, these students on a trip that brings them closer in direct contact with some of these cultural issues or these scientific issues to say, you know what, I had an idea about what this was, but it's way more complex than that. And so I have to be a careful conversational thinker. And I guess even for adults, when we're committed to that kind of conversation, there's a certain measure of humility that resists one-dimensional thinking or one-factor explanations. It resists slogans, but also you really kind of start taking responsibility for your world. It's not good enough anymore to offload my thinking to adults or to other people in authority. You have to take a certain amount of responsibility for your world. Now, that doesn't mean we don't take in their perspectives. We should speak into one another's perspectives. I think that's high value, but I think it's great for high schoolers to practice in a safe environment, a way to exercise, critical, disciplined thinking that resists just simple surface analysis.
I'm literally taking notes. You said why?
That was a long answer for a very 1 minute question, 1 second question. You used to a 5 minute answer. I'm sorry. I kind of care about this stuff, though. I got to tell you.
Yeah.
I had to pause and think when you said wide reading and nimble movement across multiple disciplines.
Yeah. By the way, we really have a problem with this in the academic world because our world seems to be getting more and more siloed. Like you get your PhD in one little tiny isolated sliver of the world, and we say, "Hey, I'm so smart here," and only 2 people in the world understand what you're talking about. And I think what Concordia is very good at, her professors, is many of us enjoy and embrace talking with other disciplines. I regularly are having conversations with an anthropologist, a psychologist, a philosopher, a sociologist, and a biologist, and many more. And we'll take on an issue and come at it from all sorts of angles. And it makes us all better, right? Because it closes our blind spots. So for me, that's that wide reading, conversational thinking. That's good stuff right there.
Multi-potentialites unite.
Yes.
So what's on deck this year for Crosswise Institute at Concordia University Irvine?
Yeah, we've been thinking about this one for several years. It was coming on down, and we wanted to take on the issue of consumerism. American consumerism is a fascinating thing because it extends its tentacles into so many different disciplines. You could look at it, marketing guys, strategy guys who know kind of how the sausage is made and talk about that with us. How do we then understand that we live in this world in a way that has to interact with it in some way, shape, or form? We can't just be, living in our monastery somewhere in the hills somewhere. We have to interface with that world, but how do we find the word in that? How do we locate proper ordering of values, a proper ordering of where Christ fits in a world in which he also was not isolated from? He lived as a person who was a carpenter inside an actual community with actual people who made purchases and transactions. Of course, now it's quite a bit different, but at the same time, there are some similar things of living in the world and trying to find the word in the midst of that. So our big thing is to try to attack consumerism from all the angles that we can think of in that short amount of time that we get these students.
I think we're both going to show up this time, even though we're not high schoolers. Who is eligible for this? Tell us some more of those details. I know this is for high schoolers. Who can actually attend?
Yeah, this is really easy. If you're a current high school student right now, you can attend. So 9 through 12. Okay, so very simple on that front. The cost is $299. That's about 4 days. So it goes from June 19th to the 22nd, which starts basically on a Sunday afternoon, and I believe ends on a Wednesday afternoon. And so that cost covers everything: food, lodging, all activities, everything. We'll even pick you up from the airport. You have to pay for your own flight, but we'll make sure you get from the... We'll be on the lookout. I'll be on the lookout.
Just accept it.
We get that from a lot of people. We have lots of professors who we generally have between 10 and 15 professors participate in this event, but we'll have others that will come across campus And sure enough, and with air quotes here, they'll drift into our building to see what's going on. And